Hello, we are back for Chapter 2. We are heading into Section 1. This section is focused on why did the English come to the North American colonies. So we can start with the English settlement, but it does apply to other nationalities also. So we're going to break that down into 5 reasons that they were coming to the North American colonies. So first we have riches. We know that the initial colonists wanted to find gold and silver. They hoped it would just be lying around, similar to how Cortez had found the cities of gold with the Aztecs, and there was a lot of products that they could take out quickly from these settlements. But the English hoped for the same thing. They were hoping gold was just laying around in North America, but they did not find that. Instead, we're going to see that they're going to find their wealth in raw resources that they could export. So they had tobacco that would be initially grown in Jamestown, help to improve their economy there. Rice from the south, lumber from New England, made into many different products. Furs, also cod and whaling became very important resources that were sent back to England. Another reason to come to the colonies that pulled people here was the opportunity to own land. In Europe, it was true that the wealthy owned the land, some that had been bestowed upon them by the king at some point, and they passed it down only to the oldest son. So if you're not the oldest son in your family, you were basically had nothing. So many people looked to other ways that they could come and get land. One of those was the headright system. So with this, you get a land grant of 50 acres if you could pay for yourself to come to the colonies. So paying that passage on one of the vessels that were coming to the area, and then you could pick up that promised land once you got there. So this was great for someone who had some wealth, but was not a first son and wanted to set up and they would often grow this into more acreage over time. Half of the colonists that came to the colonies, though, came as indentured servants. So they would serve out a work contract for 4 to 7 years, depending on who they negotiated with. They might come to be a farm laborer, or a domestic servant. Many other jobs, the people who were hiring them would pay for their passage here and care for them in the midst of their work contract, and then did give them a few things to help them survive after they ended their servitude. But this was a great way to get a new start if you were coming from a difficult situation. We also have political freedom. We see many people within England did not feel like they were treated well by the government. Their rights were not as well protected as the wealthy, and so they're seeking to come to the colonies to find new resources, new ways of governing, more self-governing, that they could protect their rights. And we see this kind of as a foundation for the Constitution, the Bill of Rights that will come later, is this idea of self-government, that we should have representatives for ourselves. Also, you had to be full of adventure to come to the New World. Did not know what fate was meeting you there. Many people lost their lives. Success was hard to come by. And you had to be willing to take the chance. Not knowing what could happen from time to time, what your conditions you might face, how friendly the Native Americans in your area would be. So it was based on a lot of sense of adventure. Finally, we have religious freedom. We have many people who are speaking out the idea of religious pluralism, meaning that all religious beliefs are equal and that we have no discrimination between what's truth and error based on the Bible. So taking and saying anything is all right for you to believe anything is one part. We want to respect other faiths and their beliefs, but if we don't speak out against untruths that might be spread, we can fall into this. So it was very important for many people to stand up strongly for their faith. They wanted to make sure the Protestant Reformation impacted the way their church was ran, and so we'll see that a lot more as we talk about the New England colonies. So that was just a quick summary. It was 1 page in our text for that section. So we're moving on to section 2. So in this section, we're looking at the key people and events about the establishment of Jamestown, and then looking at colonial governments. So we see joint stock companies were one of the ways that they established to send people to the colonies. So the joint stock companies asked for investments from people, and with that you had hopes of profits, but you're not liable for their failure. So if you invested $5,000 and there was a return of $7,000, you have your money back and you've made a profit. But if the company failed and went into debt, you were not liable to pay anything beyond the $5,000 that you had already invested. So this was very appealing to those who were looking to make money in different ways, and seeking to see this help the establishment of the colonies. So we have the Plymouth and the London companies are established and to colonize, and I double quotes there, Virginia. So at this time, what was the area of Virginia lasted from north from the Carolinas all the way to Maine. So the Plymouth Company tries to establish their first colony off the rocky coast of Maine. They send 44 men. They're unsuccessful very quickly, and the Plymouth Company is dissolved and doesn't send any more colonists in the future. But the London Company does survive. It continues to gather its resources and is able to send the first settlers to Jamestown. So at Jamestown, they arrive in May of 1607, and it becomes the first permanent English settlement, but many are going to die in the first years. Here we have starvation. Many of them were not willing to go into farming, were more worried about having gold than having food, and when that food supply ran out, then they quickly lost interest in the colony, and many died. We see disease spreading and conflicts with the Native Americans also. So two Native peoples that they made a lot of contact was Powhatan, who ordered the attacks on Jamestown as the colonists continued to push into his territory. His daughter Pocahontas will save them in that she steps in to save John Smith and does not allow her father to kill off the settlers. She will eventually marry John Rolfe, who will talk about helped to introduce tobacco to Jamestown and saved it after they faced some challenges there. And so we know they had a great impact on this time in Jamestown. A central figure at this time also was John Smith. He was quite the adventurer, had been many different places around the world, and he was seeking to have new adventure in the New World. But he comes to the colonies and works to enforce discipline. He wants to save the colony, and so he sets up the idea based on the scripture 2 Thessalonians 3:10. And the main message of that is that if you don't work, you don't eat. And so that was part of his philosophy. If you didn't work, if you didn't do some contribution to the colony, then you would not be given food. And so that was important for setting up some discipline, some guidance to help the colony continue. So for today, we're going to pause there, and we'll pick up with the rest later next week. And I will be uploading this in the notes, and so keep on top of those, and I'll check in with you next week. Have a great long weekend. Bye.